Good evening, Central Indiana, and welcome to another edition of Sports Nutz. Real quick, I want to thank our sponsors, American Basement Solutions, Reps Fitness, Just Winging It, and I've lost my spot already, Dean. See how things go when you got a gentleman like him in the studio?
That's right. Get you off your...
Real quick, Judge Williams and the findthehelp.org. We appreciate that. Wellsprings, who handles a lot of the homeless people in our community, doing a fine job with that. And also one of our newer sponsors, keeping us nice and cool in here, Stid Comfort Air Systems. Thank you so much. And now the host of Sports Nutz, Mr. Dean Sisson. How you doing, Dean?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, sir.
Welcome back, everyone. It's been a while.
Been a while.
Summertime's hard to get everyone's schedule to sync up. I'm super busy and guests are super busy, but tonight we've hit a home run.
I was going to say, you're doing well right now.
Yeah. We have the legendary voice of Indiana basketball, Chuck Crabb. If you've ever been to an IU game, you'll recognize the voice. As soon as he starts to speak, you'll go, I know that voice. So,
well, I hope my summer sinus or anything just doesn't destroy it too bad.
That's
well, native Hoosier.
I've had about
same.
20 people send me a text and say, is he going to say sophomore tonight? And I was like, I'm sure at some point.
Sophomore.
Sophomore, yes.
Sophomore.
Oh, we're done. I'm out.
You gotta have a bounce with it. That's important.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
We were talking about it earlier, and I said, every kid in Indiana has been on the playground and they've introduced themselves in your voice saying, a 6'2" sophomore from wherever they're from.
Yeah.
At India,
the fun thing with what I get to do, and it's about to be the start of year 45 announcing.
Wow.
So that's well beyond what I ever thought it was going to be. But each year, St. Charles School there in Bloomington, the Catholic school, the 7th and 8th grade will have Hawks in the Hall, which dates back to Dan Dockage when his son was when Andrew was playing at St. Charles, and Tim Fitzpatrick, the deputy AD at the time, in our department, he said, Danny, you're coaching Andrew now, so why don't we bring the St. Charles 8th grade boys basketball in, and we'll play in Assembly Hall. And of course, now you're talking the number 2 banana in the athletics department.
Sure.
With Fitzpatrick. And of course, Danny was in the transition that period after having been the interim head basketball coach. And I don't think he was in the Indianapolis radio market by then.
By that time.
Also. And so Andrew was, he was without question the best scorer, but they had about 3 or 4 kids that were just really nails. I mean, it was a good 8th grade team. It was really good. And so they came in and we played on a Sunday, and it was 4 teams. And so they had the 2 preliminary games, and then they had consolation and championship. And Andrew was great, and they won. And St. Charles had a tradition over several years where, some players like Johnny Jagger, who just finished up at Indiana, just got married last Saturday, as a matter of fact,
nice.
Down in Bloomington. They had some really good teams, but we had Damon's son come through there, and then they had to start adding girls' games. Well, both the Damon's daughters played. So, I mean, we had all the Baileys on the court at some time. But the amazing thing to me, and there were always the parochial schools from Indianapolis, from Bedford, from Seymour. They'd come in, and I would start some spiel of announcing, and then the dad would come down and say, "Are you really who I think you are?"
That's funny.
And I'm like, well, yeah, I work here.
Yeah.
This is part of my livelihood. And they, my son's name is going to be said by, and I'm like, well, if you think it's special, I'm glad you feel that way. And thank you very much. And it's a very humbling moment. And then, of course, the St. Charles parents, they're all like, we've got a supernova sitting here. This really gives a whole atmosphere to what this game is like and what it means. And, you know, I've just been really lucky to be in that setting.
Well, I always tell my wife, I think Mike Tirico has the best job in the world. I mean,
doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he gets to do golf all summer. Then he does football in the fall. He does basketball in the winter. Anything special like the Olympics, the Super Bowl, the World Series. You know, he's on all the best stuff. And I always tell her, man, he's got the best job in the world. And then when I was reading about you, I was like, I think you may have the second best job in the world, man.
You know, Tirico, I mean, when he used to come in with ESPN and he and Danny were the Tuesday night coverage.
Yeah.
You know, Dan would walk over. He'd always come across the middle of the court, and then he'd beckon Mike over. Mike Tirico never forgets anyone.
Really?
And I would imagine if he were to come through this door now, off the square here in Martinsville, he would probably call me by name.
That's funny.
But that's just Mike Tirico. I mean, he's not caught up in all the aura and the role that he serves. I mean, he's a great storyteller. I mean, we've been seeing that every night and every morning.
Yeah.
And of course, how many hours is an NBC personality on during the Olympics?
Yeah.
I mean, it's and being 13 hours ahead
Yeah.
when you're in Tokyo. I mean, I've been blessed. I had an experience in '84 in LA and being out there working at the main press center. And then in '96, I was the competition producer for track and field. So I worked in the Olympic Stadium
Nice.
Oh, wow.
during all of that. And, you know, you get into it with track and field. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell from television. I mean, if you watch Peacock or whatever it is, or the NBC app. You're seeing it at X a.m. This time we're starting prelims. Well, the schedule is, it's usually like 9 a.m. till noon. And then you have about 6 hours. And then you have the evening session, gates open at 6. And then they have finals from 7 to 8:30. And of course, track and field is in the second half of the Olympics. So it's 9 days. It's the second Friday until Sunday of closing ceremony. And so there's only 3 or 4 disciplines that are being contested at any one time. I mean, you've got maybe 2 field events and 3 running events.
Sure.
And then you're done. Because I'm trying to remember now, Kevin, in Olympic track and field, there's 18 disciplines for the men and 18 for the women. And of course, they've added some, this year now, they've added some co-ed in relays, which is really an interesting approach.
Yeah, I like it.
And, you know, I mean, here the state's been fortunate. Lena Irby from Indianapolis, she received, a bronze medal, if I remember.
So. Yep.
With the 4x4 medley or mixed gender, whatever they're calling it.
Because they originally got
they DQ'd,
right?
DQ'd
and then
on her exchange. Yeah. So I mean, you've got all this time to focus and see all of that, and of course, with them having a 13-hour time difference, they tell the story when they want to tell the story.
Right.
Yeah. It's all taped. They can set it up and run it whenever they want.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, Kevin, but and Dean, but I'm one that I'll go into the cell phone and I'll start looking for the result.
Oh, sure.
Because I mean, sometimes they'll embargo results.
Right.
Yeah.
If it depends on how good the TV money is, you know.
Well, with Simone Biles the other day, they kept saying she got a medal, but they wouldn't say what
which medal,
yeah.
what color.
Yeah.
And I assumed it was bronze because I assumed if it was gold or silver, they would have been saying, "Oh, she got gold." So, and then the U.S. women's soccer team, they played at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
So by the time I got up, the game was already over, and I got on Twitter, and they just showed a couple pictures of them hugging, and I'm like, they got beat because
Canada on that. Yeah.
And so
you was trying to place a bet on it, wasn't you, before it comes?
Yeah. So you would catch up with chat real quick.
Yeah, real quick. We got. Let me go back up to the top. Bill Martin, hello, thank you. Michelle, way out in Iowa, thank you for tuning in. Hello, Valerie. Kenneth, cool. Dean, your mom and dad's watching.
Nice.
Hello to the assistants. For us IU fans, this is awesome. Thank you, Dean and Kevin. Eric, I am an IU fan. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for tuning in, Eric.
Yep, Billy's on there. Michelle's sharing it. Eric, I am an IU fan.
So Michelle grew up here in Martinsville, and she moved out to Iowa, and she's one of our biggest supporters. She's on everything we do.
Yeah.
Any fundraiser we have, she participates in. So we always like to give her a hard time because she supports us. And
Yeah.
She's out there in
Sure.
Hawkeye land, though.
Yeah.
Actually, and she's close to Iowa State, so.
yeah,
Well, of
Which
course,
is
we
even
could be
worse.
talking of the next Big Ten member. Who knows?
that's right.
That is-
of Iowa State.
I mean,
That's what is the
wow.
Big 12 is no longer pretty much in existence,
Well,
right?
it'll be interesting to see. You know, I saw a couple of stories today on some of the college administration pages where it was talking about Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner of the Big 12, talking with the new commissioner of the Pac-12.
yeah,
And what's the possibilities here? You know, we're because as you've seen over the years, going back to Penn State in what 1990 was it? Right along in there.
yeah, early 90s.
I mean, the Big Ten started it.
yeah,
We were the linchpin that got all of the transition going. So don't ask me what league Syracuse is in now, or
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, or West Virginia.
yeah.
I'm not
Well-
sure I could proproperly say.
Well,
but,
at one
but-
point, the Big East had 75 teams in it, if I
well,
remember.
yeah, they only had 16, I guess, at the largest.
Gee,
But I mean, it is interesting because there were conversations yesterday between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 about possibility of a merger.
Wow.
But yet Bowlesby is saying, and some of the presidents in the remaining schools in Oklahoma, in Iowa, in Texas, we're not looking for a merger. We're looking to expand.
Sure.
We want to expand the Big 12. Well, of course, the Pac-12's got a pretty good pedigree too. When you go from Seattle through Eugene and Corvallis down to Stanford and across the bay to Cal to California, or down to UCLA, and then you come into the Arizona with the two there, and
Tucson
pick up Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, that ain't bad.
We
Yeah.
got the West covered. My daughter committed to play softball fast pitch at IU. Shelly Kilman, I believe. Brett's an IU fan. Yes, next to the Cyclones, I give you all a hard time too.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
I remember when the Big Ten went and got Penn State, I thought, what are they doing? They're never going to be able to beat Penn State in football. And it turns out,
It kind of equalized pretty
yeah,
quickly,
kind of balanced
didn't it?
out. Yeah.
Well, it did, and in that respect, it was a bit humbling for the Penn State
for Penn
people.
State, yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things about the administrative structure of the Big Ten, because one of the major premises is the idea of the collegiate cooperation in terms of research and academics. And we always talk about the AAU, the American Association of Universities, which is the highest level of 70 schools in the country. And so almost every Big Ten school, I mean, Nebraska was an AAU member when it joined, and then allowed its membership to lapse. And so, that kind of took away from it a little bit in some people's eyes, but still, there's the idea of the research and the cooperation. Penn State obviously met all of those points, but they also talked a lot about, the Big Ten was one of the early conferences that had the normal progress rule. So many hours in a year, so many credits, and at the end of 4 years, the prime goal, we're going to get you graduated.
Right.
And of course, as everybody that follows what happens in Bloomington, you've seen any number of players in 3 years, they get the degree
graduated.
because they come in. Well, it's interesting now with it all, Dean, because they come in after Christmas of their senior year in high school. They graduate early.
Mm-hmm.
They have the credits. They come in, they do spring ball if they're in football, or even, perhaps have the chance to move into some of the Olympic sports, but you more often than not, they're going to redshirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll be there in the summer because I guess after 45 years in Bloomington and watching everything up close and personal, the coaches expect the young men and young women to stay disciplined and work in the summer, be it weightlifting, conditioning, heavier training, the pickup games and whatnot. And so in a 3-year degree is very realistic because every semester at 12 hours, all of a sudden you've got 36 to 52 hours in a year potentially.
Yeah.
And so at the end of 3 full years, including the summers, you've got a Cody Zeller walking down the aisle, picking up his Kelley School of Business degree.
Yeah.
And just little things like that. But I mean, the emphasis is the degree, and the degree. And it's going to be met. It just so happens that God bless that particular person maybe with about a 6'8" to 6'10" frame.
Yeah.
Or with I believe the Kleiman name was up there. If she's a pitcher, she's probably standing out there 60 feet away, and she'll fire that ball down or has a drop ball, or I don't know how they do pitching.
His daughter's a decent pitcher.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
It's just utterly amazing.
Yeah, I've got my daughter pitches, and she plays in college, and I've got to the point where I can't catch her anymore. Like she throws it too fast, and I'm too old, and I can't react anymore. And for years and years and years, I never caught her with a mask. I don't need a mask. I don't need a mask. And I'd catch her, and she went away for a summer and went to school, and she came back, and she threw about 5 or 6 pitches, and I said, hold on a second. I went and got a helmet, and I put it on. I said,
you sure you did?
Yeah, I said, there's no reason to take one in the face just to prove that I got.
But besides the strength in the arm, I mean, think if you were a Jenny Finch, in build,
yeah,
and the release of the ball, holy cow,
yeah. What you see like with Kat Osterman, she's 6 foot tall, long arms.
Jenny's 6'5" almost.
Yeah.
But they have long fingers, so they can wrap around the ball and they can spin it, and it's all about the revolutions. How many times you can make that ball turn?
And when you see it, then
there's a video on Twitter floating around right now. Danielle Laurie is the pitcher for Canada. She played at Washington and won a national championship out there. And I guess they were doing pitching lessons, and some boys were over there hitting, and they were kind of chirping, blah blah blah. So Danielle Laurie said, jump in there. Yeah. She threw 3 pitches. She threw him a rise ball inside up under his hand, up under his
chin.
Got
his attention.
Yeah. Then she threw him a change up, and I think she threw him maybe a change up and a drop ball, and he didn't have a chance. And she just caught the ball and kind of turned around like, go away. You know what I mean? And it was really funny. But
my daughter's 6 foot and throws 69 miles an hour.
69 is not bad.
Well, that answers that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And Chip's got one for you.
If she's 6 foot tall, they're throwing from 43 feet. By the time she strides out, she's letting go of it at 39, 38 feet at 69 miles an hour. Yeah, that's
good luck.
Yeah, good luck with that. So Chip Keller, he's one of our good friends, a good follower here. What are some of your most favorite memories of games at Assembly Hall?
Wow, like I say, I'm getting ready for 45, and with the announcing, and actually going back to my undergraduate, I'm what's that now? 53 years. So I going back to Lou Watson, watching him in the field house, coach in one of his last years, and then the move into Assembly Hall with Coach Knight. So I probably am coming up on about 1,000 games of men's basketball that I've either seen or announced in either the new field house or Assembly Hall, or as we now call it, Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Yeah.
But man, there's a whole series.
The Watt shot, maybe.
Well, yeah, Christian's shot against Kentucky. 10 years ago. It's hard to overlook that. If I had to pick one, Kevin, and this surprises people sometimes when I say this, I'd probably go back to 1980. Isaiah would have been ending his freshman year. Woody and Butch Carter were in their senior year. Whitman, Kitchell were there. You know, Chuck Franz,
Tony Brown, maybe
all that. Tony, they were all around that group, and we were in contention for the Big Ten title, which we did win that year. And it was the last game. It was either a Saturday or a Sunday, and Ohio State came calling. Now, think back to that era.
Clark.
Yeah, you had 5 number 1 draft choices on the court at any one time, because you had Isaiah and Woody for Indiana. And then with Michigan, you had Clark Kellogg, Herb Williams, and there's who was along with that group too.
They had the small forward that played. I can't think of his name, but I know who you're talking about.
There were 5 of them, 5 number 1s, and the game was overtime, and we won. I never was one necessarily to keep Sports Illustrated's, but Rich Clarkson flew in for that game and did the photography. And Rich is an unbelievable photographer and a great friend of a lot of people in Bloomington. I mean, he did a lot of illustration for Bob Knight books.
Yeah.
And that's the one spread that I still have from the Sports Illustrated. It was Ray Tolbert celebrating with the crowd coming out of the stands, rushing the court.
Wow.
And
I guess I would have. That would have been one of my questions. When was the only other time that the IU fans ran the court?
They've done it, but
I don't even remember that. But I went to a game in '80. I think Iowa State was either '80 or '81. Johnny Orr coached them.
Yeah,
sat right behind the bench. So I know that.
Orr would have been at Michigan at that time.
So was it? It would have been '80.
A little after that, probably.
Okay, maybe so. But I thought Isaiah was there. 80, somewhere around there. Maybe it wasn't Johnny Orr. I thought it was. But I was only.
Well, no,
16.
he would have been at Iowa State by then, because he was. Well, I'm thinking of Frieder. Frieder was fishing.
He was 88 or 89 whenever they won it, because he left, and Steve Fisher
took over.
Yeah, so that was what, 89. I think it was either because
Glenn Rice and them, wasn't it?
Yeah, because IU won it in 87. Somebody else won it, and
Kansas.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then,
with the big center.
Yeah.
Manning.
Danny Manning.
Danny Manning, yeah.
Manning and the Miracles, they called it.
And then Michigan won it the following year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 89 when Frieder turned in and said he was taking the Arizona State job, and
then Fisher moved
and Schembechler said, well, then you're the Arizona State coach then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
1,000 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
basketball only.
I do women's basketball too. I've done all of those since about '96. So and obviously it's a fun time right now.
Man, they got
being
rolling.
A part of that. I mean, with what Terry Morin has been able to accomplish, and
they're so fun to watch.
Yeah.
They're well. I think they're so well coached.
Great discipline.
Yeah,
and Allie Patberg. And certainly Tyra Buss before her,
Tyra's
and Amanda Cahill in that same group, and just really amazing. And of course, a lot is made, and rightfully so, of what Allie has accomplished, and so many people here in Martinsville probably came up in regional or semi-state against Columbus North when Allie was playing over there, and then of course you've got Grace Berger.
Grace Berger's really good.
Who's a very unsung assassin.
Yeah,
a quiet assassin.
She's
my goodness.
What Clark Kellogg calls a stat sheet stuffer. She does a little bit of everything. She rebounds, she scores, she assists. I mean, she had what, 2 triple doubles last year?
Yeah, 2 triple, or maybe 3.
I think 3. Yeah.
It was 3 triple. Yeah. No, I made the mistake once of saying only 2. And Megan, the SID, sits down about 4 people from me. It's 3. She shouts, it's 3. I'm like, well, sometimes I don't read the right script.
Chip's got another one, Dean. Did you have to audition for Blue Chips? And where did you record your part in the movie, if you got in there?
Well, Chip's asking some interesting questions here, but I was planning on a vacation with my wife to Chicago, and I get a phone call from Tim Garl saying, Coach wants you to come up to Frankfurt tomorrow.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And I'm like, Tim, I'm thinking about going out of town and having a week's vacation. Coach wants you to come to Frankfurt
Understood.
and be up here tomorrow morning.
Right.
And so I drove up, and I met Bill Friedkin, the producer. You know, you think back to the French Connection, and of course the screenwriter who did that also wrote Bull Durham.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I meet both of them, and they say, well, get in the car with us. We're going over to the Frankfurt Middle School. So we go over to the middle school right behind the Everett Case Gymnasium.
Okay.
And so they had a sound system set up, and they said, okay, we want you to introduce these 3 players. And so
this is your audition, pretty much. isn't it?
well, in a sense it was, but it also became obviously the soundtrack that's about halfway through the movie of Blue Chips.
When Penny and
yeah,
Shaq.
you know,
Oh, that's
Penny
right.
Hardaway
That's right.
and Shaq and
Matt Nover.
Matt Nover. So, you know, what was it now?
Neon
Bordeaux.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I said like a 7'4" center from New Orleans. Neon Bordeaux. You know, and as you remember, the 3 guys standing in the middle of the Frankfurt court and interacting with
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte and the other coaches, why they all said, you know, Penny says, well, I'm not this tall. And Matt says, well, I'm not that tall, but I am good looking. and Neon, I'm 6'4", or 7'4". I am 7'4", you know. But I mean, it was an interesting time because it was quintessential Indiana love of basketball.
Right.
Because Friedkin would talk before the filming began each evening. We had 4 different nights, and with that he would set the scene about we're doing something entirely different. We're actually, with steady cams and other equipment, we're going to be doing actual play-by-play, and we're going to use all of this action in the game. So everything that people saw in the movie, in the 3 or 4 different game settings that they had, was true action that, I mean, really was cinematographically or cinematographically or whatever the word is. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was great stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, when they got to the game where it was Knight versus Nolte,
Yeah.
and I mean, you know, listening to Nick Nolte, I mean, he spent the previous winter in Bloomington, and is, you know, the craftsman that he is with his profession. He listened to what Bob said, how he said it, and then you saw it replicated in the movie. I mean, when they had practices in that gym setting,
Yeah.
where he was talking to the one guard that was flunking radio TV,
yeah.
you know, and that was vintage Bob Knight. Now, it was probably vintage Bob Knight, less about 6 or 8 colorful words that would have maybe dressed up some of the response, but still, you know, nothing was lost.
I have to admit that, because I was going to say that it was still tough for me to watch Hurley in an IU jersey. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, Bobby out there.
Yeah,
with
it was
Indiana.
11 too. Did he have
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, you don't wear 11 IU if you're Bobby
not
Hurley
very,
from Duke.
not very easily.
No.
But it was a neat time. I mean, it was. I had 2 other days that I went up there, and actually Chuck Marlowe and I spent some time in a separate recording session. Just a lot of the sound snippets that you hear, you know, timeout or personal foul or things like that are played over various action moments in that pivotal Western versus Indiana game. I spent a morning up there, and of course they were like, well, here, take your glasses off. Let us trim your eyebrows. And I'm like, you can trim the eyebrows, but if you expect me to read what's in front of me, I'm not going to be able to read anything, you know. So it was a fun morning. And of course, Chuck was one, Chuck Marlowe, the late Chuck Marlowe, was one that his sound, his voice, he and Laz were recorded over all of the action that they shot with some of those cameras because Friedkin wanted to have a record of what happened so he'd know what to cut and splice and use. So I mean, it was an absolutely terrible movie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But for those of us that were a part of it, it was an experience that we'll never have again. It was a neat moment.
It was another chance for us to watch Calvert and a few other guys play.
Well, yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Riley and Hurley and I uniforms I couldn't handle, but the rest of it was awesome. I think.
So
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little Matt Nover story. So we go tailgating about 4 or 5 years ago. It was the IU Michigan game. It was when it was obviously in Bloomington, and it went 3 or 4 overtimes, and IU ended up eventually losing. But we,
Calvin Ramsey.
yeah,
Ohio State.
the Ohio
That's-
State,
yeah.
I knew it'd come to me.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a matter of thinking.
You
through
only
it.
got a few players you got to go through there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For over 45 years,
Thousands
40,
of
yeah.
games.
Yeah. So we go out at halftime and we come back in, and the guys I'm with, they run into a bunch of people they know, and we're right by the Cannons tailgating. And I look over and I see Matt Nover. And so I thought, I'm going to go talk to him eventually or whatever. So we're standing there, everyone's talking. We hear the game start, second half starts up. So third quarter goes by. We're like, we should probably go into the game. So everyone starts to go. It's the start of the fourth quarter. So I kind of let everyone go, and I let the crowd go and kind of end up walking next to Matt. And I said, hey, do I know you? And he said, well, I went to IU, he said,
Yeah,
I'm
kinda.
I was a student here, And I said, oh, who am I kidding? I said, you played on my favorite team ever. I said, you care if we get a picture? And he thought it was the funniest thing ever. He goes, no, that's fine. So he turned and we took a picture together, and then he went his way and I went my way. And so I still have that picture in here. But it was funny because he wasn't going to say, well, yeah, I'm Matt Nover. I played basketball here. Well,
Right.
he just said, well, yeah, I went to IU, and very downplayed it. It
At
was
least
really
he didn't say Ricky Rowe.
Yeah,
Right,
Ricky
right.
Rowe, yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's who he
So
was.
That would have been funny if he would have said, yeah, I'm Ricky Rowe.
Ricky Rowe.
Yeah. So what was Penny's? So Shaq was Neon Bordeaux and Matt was Ricky Rowe. What was Penny's?
I'm trying to remember now. Isn't that awful?
I'll Google it, but I think he was wasn't he just Penny?
No, I think he was.
That was really where he and Shaq struck it up. And of course, Shaq ended up at Orlando, beginning his NBA career.
With Penny,
and
yeah.
Penny was there.
Yeah. He was I think
Butch McRae.
Butch McRae, there you go.
He's
Man,
old,
that's
man.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Butch McRae, where he went up. Noldy went up to Chicago, inner city Chicago,
and got him.
And of course, there was craziness. I mean, when you think of Noldy, about a little bit chameleon, if you will, of having. Well, are you Catholic?
Yeah.
Or are you Baptist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Southern Baptist,
Which Baptist?
Yeah.
Are you a good Baptist?
Yeah.
Oh,
And he played it just perfectly with all three of them.
well, and he had a 50-50 chance at least
Yeah.
on the Baptist. Now, Catholicism was one thing.
He was pretty good, yeah. It was,
Sharon wants to know, what is your most prized piece of IU memorabilia?
Wow.
You're not wearing it, are you?
No. Well, I've got a ring on that. It's kind of hard to argue. The '87 championship. I have a collection of all those years of being in Bloomington, where Jerry Yeagley and Todd Yeagley and Mike Freitag with soccer. They always are very kind. If there's an NCAA championship, there can be a ring that was part of that. A couple of them from Coach with Big Ten titles, with men's basketball, and an unknown fact. I'm the cheerleader administrator at IU, if you can imagine that.
yeah, I read that. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so I've got 6 national championship rings from the all-female Crimson Squad.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know the first. If you want to see a very terrible forward roll, I mean Kevin, it's awful. It is just absolutely awful.
Got that on video anywhere? 'Cause
I know how to pick good talent.
There you go.
So I stay the heck out of the way. And but my wife has gone shopping and bought a couple of glass topped cases that we have in my den. and it's loaded with I don't know how many rings. I really don't. But I mean, and football, I can't overlook football with all the success of Coach Mallory's time, and now obviously what Coach Allen's attaining with his career, and the 1 year that Coach Lynch had with Play 13 and everything, right, following Coach Epner's passing. So it's been a lot of fun.
So I'm sure you don't know this, but you know that IU has 8 national championships in men's soccer and 8 runner-ups. I mean,
I knew they were tough.
Yeah,
the numbers are amazing.
We have, let's see, what is it now, Dean? 21 trips, I think, to the College Cup.
Yeah,
either the play the semifinal game or the championship game.
Yeah,
and a lot of memories there. Thinking back to 19 and seeing a ball just clear the hands of the goalie, and Stanford wins in sudden death, and this year the sudden death with Marshall, which you can't take anything away from the Thundering Herd. That was a great soccer team that they had, and the same way it was for Indiana with Becerra and Celentano, the goalie, and it was just one of those where a shot got through.
Right. Kind of felt like Marshall was like an international soccer team. I mean, it was grown men.
It was like the old San Francisco.
Yeah.
When I first came back to IU in the fall of '76, and Sunday afternoons were spent in the stadium watching Indiana soccer with Jerry Yeagley as the coach. And so at that time, the star was an Argentine by the name of Angelo Di Bernardo, who grew up in Chicago and played here. And then Angelo was followed and overlapped by Armando Betancourt from Honduras.
Okay.
And of course, Mondo just passed away from COVID within the last 6 weeks. But I mean, seeing those teams in the stadium, and we made the NCAA for the finals in '76, '78, and '80, and all 3 years ran into San Francisco, which the rule then didn't have the age restrictions, but they had Norwegians and Danes and Swedes. They had Caribbean Islanders or Kenyans or Nigerians for the midfield or the forwards, which meant they were lightning quick.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 3-2, 2-1, 1-0, and it's like, are we ever going to get over this? Right. Are we ever going to get past it? And then we played Duke in '82 in Fort Lauderdale in 8 overtimes.
Yeah.
8 overtimes, Kevin.
Beat Duke though, right? That's
well, we did. Well, see, and that was at a time where there's a 90-minute video that the Big Ten Network carries every so often that was done by I believe the company is Blue Line in Bloomington.
Okay.
About Indiana soccer. And it was the idea of getting over the hump. And so it's fascinating because it shows the development of the program from when we first received varsity status in '73 in the spring, and then played the first varsity year in the fall of '73, and then made the NCAA and advanced, but we'd lose the big one. We couldn't grab the gold ring. And at that time, Bill Orwig, when he was athletics director at IU, he wasn't particularly keen, as it's brought out in this video, he wasn't keen on soccer. He wanted ice hockey.
Really?
Because of his Michigan background, and he grew up in Toledo.
Yeah. So that brings me to a question. I've always heard that the reason that Assembly Hall is shaped the way it is, with no seats on the end, the high walls.
Right, high walls.
Yeah. Because it was supposed to be.
Well, it was part of it. That's a college size rink.
Hockey rink. Yeah.
It would be. I mean, we
So that is true.
The building design itself, it was going to be like a Michigan Big House,
Okay.
24,000 seats. And then they did away with that because they didn't think they could sell the ends or the corners.
Behind the baskets.
Yeah, behind the baskets. So they still wanted to keep that configuration for an ice sheet. And for those people that have been to the hall and been to the north end court concessions,
Mm-hmm.
toward the garage door that's on the northeast corner,
Yep. I know.
there's another garage door behind that, of all things, had the pit where the Zamboni would have been driven in.
Would have been parked.
So the ice could melt.
Yeah.
I mean, all the infrastructure was in place.
Okay. I've always heard that, but I didn't. It makes sense with the sloping walls.
The way it goes up,
Yeah.
from section F to M and A to F on the other side, G to M and A to F. But we've never had any ice down.
Really?
We've had elephants and we've had lions and tigers. 3 different years that Ringling Brothers played there. But this 90-minute video about Indiana soccer was great because the other thing that Duke Indiana game brought out was the ACC versus the Big Ten. And Wayne Duke wasn't a very big soccer fan like Bill Orwig.
Yeah.
And so we win in 8 overtimes. Now, keep in mind, okay, you had 2 45-minute halves. You had 2 10-minute sudden death. And then it went into 5-minute frames.
Okay.
And so we got up to the 8th overtime. So the 2 10s and then the 5, and so we win. Greg Thompson scoring both goals. We win 2-1. And the next thing you know, Wayne Duke is trumpeting about, look at the balance and the strength of the Big Ten Conference. And here we beat the ACC in men's soccer. And obviously now the Big Ten men's and women's soccer are 2 of the greatest fall tournaments that we have with our Olympic sports.
Yeah.
And it's neat to watch.
It is fun. Because I don't know that much about soccer, and I watch them, and that's where I learn most of my stuff. But it's fun just watching them because it's local. You know what I mean? Sure. So it's
obviously when we talk about the Godfather and Jerry Yeagley, there's so much that he's been able to establish in the state of Indiana. Hearing him tell the story of coming to Bloomington in 1963. And he couldn't go to University Sporting Goods or Southern Sporting Goods on the square and buy a soccer ball.
Because they didn't carry him.
They didn't carry him.
Yeah.
If he would have gone in and old crazy Don Shiflett would have probably told him, we don't sell soccer balls. You kick those with your feet.
Yeah.
We basketball and footballs. I can hear Don now or Bill Belcher in at University Sporting Goods. And so it was just... I got them reversed. Don was at University and Bill was at Southern. Sporting Goods. There we go. Got to get my memories right.
That's funny.
But now we've got great players from Fort Wayne and Indianapolis and all over Indianapolis. Carmel, Noblesville, Fishers, Avon, Zionsville, Center Grove. It's everywhere.
So Martinsville used to be kind of a football powerhouse, and
believe me, I remember well. I couldn't remember the Ciderwitz days around here quite well.
So, and it's kind of fallen off, and a lot of people blame it on soccer because they say a lot of the kids that play the skill positions now go play soccer, and
it's mentioned certainly.
So it's an interesting.
When your numbers are already low.
Yeah,
and then you're losing your skill position players.
Well, we came past the Wooden Middle School when we turned to come up into the downtown, and there were 3 little league football teams
practicing,
working out on the front lawn.
Just starting, yeah.
It's all part of it.
We're actually one of the sponsors now for Gently Football.
Oh, you got that done?
Yep.
Nice.
Good deal.
So what does Shelly say? Watch out for freshman soccer with Riley Anslinger. She's a dear family friend from Evansville, an amazing athlete.
Yeah, now I've got to work on Riley because we have what we call crimson cards, which is the touch and go to get in the doors. And Riley, who's been in Bloomington all summer, got her crimson card early. and I have experienced her on emails about my card doesn't work. When are you going to fix it? And I'm like, what's this deal? I mean, and so I go in and look at the profile, and there are these drop down boxes that I can see, and there's one that says activated, and I'm like, aha! And so I write her back, Dear Riley, I have checked your profile and your card has not been activated. Please go back to the card center in the union. And the card center gives her a runaround. Well, we ran this through the scanner and it works great. And she comes back out and she tries to get in to the locker room at Wilkinson, our volleyball wrestling building next to Cook and Simon Scott Assembly Hall. And she still can't get in.
Can't get in.
I hope she can get in now. Volleyball begins this weekend, as a matter of fact.
Shelly, if she can't get in, have her call Kevin. Kevin, take care of it.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, I got a daughter going to IU, but she's not doing athletics.
That's
so
funny.
yeah.
So, a couple of questions. What's your most memorable moment with Coach Knight? And then someone asked earlier, did you ever make Coach mad during a game and have to deal with that?
During the game? No. I've been lucky there. 85, Mike Giommi was one of the starting forwards. And the longer Mike played in that 85 year, the more in Dutch he got with Coach Knight.
Yeah.
And so we came up on a Big Ten game in maybe late January or early February. And, I always work with the scorekeeper, which at the time was always the senior manager. Now, we've had the same scorekeeper the last, 20 years with Dr. Dave Pillar.
Okay.
Dave was a senior manager, and then he started teaching in the MCCSC in the Monroe County schools. So he never, he never left. And so he's stayed our scorekeeper. And I don't remember who it was then. It would have been right after Mike Fox was the scorekeeper, who was the longtime Hoosier Dome manager. And just before, a young man now by the name of Scott Dolson, who just happens to be my boss.
Nice.
Not bad. But they were both left-handed.
Okay.
And so they kept bumping into me when I was trying to announce. So anyhow, I copied down the starting lineups. And at the time, I wasn't wearing glasses. Mistake. And so I circled 41, Giommi. And I introduce him. And I get down, and this is the Hilliard Gates training that I had. Hilliard, now Chuck, when you do it, you do the low number and high number, and you do the forwards, then you do the center and the two guards. Okay. So I do whoever the other forward was, and then I said, and at the other forward, a 6'8", sophomore from Newark, Ohio, maybe. I think he was from Ohio. And I said, Mike Giommi. And of course, Knight, as you might recall, he always was down like a baseball catcher.
Right.
He was on his haunches and his arms resting across his legs. And he kind of looked over and he gave me this look and he said, he's not starting. And that was it. That was the sum total. And, the scorekeeper said, where'd you copy that from? Thinking he made a mistake. Well, no, I made the mistake. And so then I went on and he was, he was fine. I mean, that was during the game. I mean, there were occasions where, coach would lean down and maybe say something or like, give me that. Yeah. And he'd be grabbing the microphone.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. How many, especially it was in the 80s when he'd grab the mic.
Oh, he used to grab it. And of course, that was when I used to have a mic much like what you gentlemen have provided me here. But toward about 84 or 5, I went to a headset.
Oh, nice.
That wasn't as convenient.
For him.
For him, it wasn't as convenient. For me, it was great.
Right.
But he also could bounce that microphone.
When he was finished?
Then he'd just throw it down, and I'm like, oh, that's a $150 microphone.
Right.
But, he would... it was interesting watching the game pass before me because you never knew what was going to happen with Bob Knight. The Indiana Classic, a good example. Everybody always enjoyed those. 4 games,
Yep.
4 teams. And of course, Lee Corso used to delight in saying it was Indiana versus, Sisters of the Poor,
Right.
Brothers of the Blind,
Right.
and the Lame and Afflicted, or something like that, as he just would needle
Coach.
the teams that would come in. We had a year where Texas El Paso came up. I mean, we had a really good series in the 80s, well, the 70s and 80s, with Don Haskins and Texas El Paso.
Yeah.
And they were great friends.
Yes.
Great friends, because Knight loved nothing more than flying out to El Paso, and then he and Don would go get lost in the mountains, and they'd go fishing. So Haskins shows up. Now, of course, Haskins was a big old boy.
Wasn't his nickname the Bear or something?
Yeah,
like that?
along those lines.
Yeah.
He was a big man.
Yeah.
I mean, he wore boots. He wore clip-on ties. And so, we used to have a banquet, and we had a banquet the night before at the foundation, and Bob and Haskins were trying to one-up each other, and Haskins got Knight and needled him over. Here's my doc. Now, where we are in El Paso across from Juarez, you got to have specialty doctors. Because these boys, they go to the wrong doors in some of these places in Juarez. and so then, it just kind of went on from there. And we're all rolling on the floor laughing. So the next night, and it might have even been the championship game. It might have been the second night. We're playing UTEP. And Haskins is coming down. And this used to be the fun before coaches' boxes, because the coaches would cross right in front of me at the 10-second line.
Right.
So Haskins is standing in front of the Indiana bench almost, and Knight's down at the other end because he's encouraging his team to play defense,
Right.
and his slaps and everything. And so they're walking back, and Knight does nothing more than reaches up and grabs Haskins' tie and jerks it off. And oh my God. And then he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a butterscotch disc or a peppermint and gives it to Haskins. And of course, Indiana ended up winning by maybe 45 points. But I mean, things like that. Or in what year? It would have been January of 81. Okay, it was the inauguration day. Reagan is going in as president.
Yeah.
That midday, the Iranians released the 400 hostages.
Yeah.
And so Knight, as he always did, he'd come out last minute, and he'd walk down and say hello to the visiting coach, and then he was walking back, and he leaned down and kind of pulled me up a little bit, and he's like, this is a real special day. We need to say something about the hostages and the release. And I'm ready to, ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Right.
Indiana University, welcome. And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I'm going live in a minute. And so I can't even remember what I said. I came up with something about, ladies and gentlemen, the yellow ribbons tied around trees and other points of display in our country have never had a greater meeting than what we enjoy today. God bless America. And let's say our thanks and our prayers for the release of the hostages from Iran. And everybody, and I'm like, okay.
That worked.
It worked. Yeah.
So, something was pretty good with that.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of a good feeling when you're kind of ad-libbing and kind of on the fly, and then it works out and everyone.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
And he would do that. I mean, I can remember a time at Market Square being called into the back locker rooms in the East End, and coach is in another room that has a door that shuts, and he was away, and I was in the locker room talking to the door.
Oh, that's funny.
And so, hey, Chuck, we've got it might have been Joe Nuxell and Jim Ferguson here tonight. Jim was, of course, the the press rep for the Reds all those great years with
Nutz
the Big Red
12
Machine.
upright,
And of course, Nutz had been just a hero of anyone and a great, great pitcher. And so it's like, I want to really build them up. We really want to make them feel good. And so I came up with something, and I looked at me and he smiled and, kind of gave that. And of course, Nutz standing up and waving, and Ferguson's appropriately embarrassed. I mean, he's like all of us, very humble journalists. You know, my degree area journalism. I'm not into the personality. You just, you roll with it. But I mean, he did that with me with Johnny Bench.
Yeah.
One time, and just various moments like that. You never knew who you were going to see walk in and be there. I mean, I can still remember going up to the desk in the Hilton in New Orleans and doing some business on that weekend we were there. And who's standing next to me but Ted Williams?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. And I'm like, whoa.
Right.
Or
Teddy Ballgame.
Yeah.
Or, of course, many people around here might remember the old days of the Phil Harris Classic down at Linton at the Phil Harris Golf Course, the public golf course down there. And Ted Bishop, who's up at Franklin at the Legends, I mean, he, of course, cut his eye teeth and his start down at Phil Harris. And Ted was a great baseball fan, and so he did nothing more than would bring players in, a Hall of Fame recognition, or he'd bring in astronauts. He'd call the aeronautics program at Lafayette about, hey, give me your alumni list and let me reach out to Neil Armstrong.
Wow.
Or let me reach out to Gene Cernan.
Nice.
And he and his wife Cindy would have a steak fry on the Friday night. And so we'd sit down. And so here I'd be sitting, and I really got to know Moose Scouring.
Okay.
And he did PR for a trucking company in Chicago. Of course, he retired from the White Sox, if I remember, after his long run with the Yankees.
Mm-hmm.
And so poor Art, that was the truck owner, the truck company owner. Art was, they always called him Poor Art. Well, Moose gave his first World Series ring to Art.
Really?
Oh, wow.
And so Moose would always say, Chuck, say hello. This is Eno Schlatter. And then you start going back through all the great Cardinal memories, or about, thinking of what we're doing here about, hey, how about Jack Brickhouse sitting over here?
Right.
Yeah.
Or Ernie Banks. I mean, the day Ernie was supposed to be honored in Wrigley Field for one of his accomplishments, he was in Linton playing in the Phil Harris Classic.
Wow.
But you'd see all these guys, and they would all have, I mean, I remember a morning in the park there, what is there? The Parkview Motel in Linton, and right next to it's the city park. They have a really nice pavilion, and a group always had breakfast for us on that Saturday. Here's an event that was a wonderful scramble, and they had 4 rounds of golf, each with 36 foursomes or fivesomes.
Wow.
It was just unbelievable. So I'm sitting there eating breakfast. They had me as the starter. So I wanted a good meal, and Gene Cernan sits down. And he's like, hey, somebody said you're buddies with Knight. And I'm like, yeah, I work with Coach.
I know him.
And Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon.
Right.
He starts in, he's like, let's share stories. And so, it's just the outreach that the man has had in his almost now 80, he'll be 81 in October.
Yeah.
Now, don't ask me the date, because I know there are so many people in the state that have that circled on their calendar.
Sadly, I can tell you it's the 25th.
I knew it was the end of the month. He's about 8 days ahead of me. I'm November 3rd.
Yeah.
But I don't get anywhere near the celebration that man does. I mean, even to this day, packages and letters still come to Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Wow.
Really?
And particularly since he and Karen have moved back to Bloomington.
Why do you think he came back?
Well, a lot of it is the idea of medical concern.
Yeah.
He's always maintained a great relationship with two people come to mind. Dr. Brad Bomba, Brad Sr., who was, of course, a great tight end for Indiana football in the 50s, and turned down a $3,000 contract to go play NFL so he could go to med school. But Brad Bomba Sr. and Larry Rink, Dr. Rink, the cardiologist.
Yep.
And so Larry is very much watched out for Coach. I mean, it's no secret that Coach has some health concerns, and
sure,
we all are concerned about his health, and so much want to embrace him and enjoy the time that we have with him. And 3 weeks ago, he was at French Lick when Mike Woodson had an Indiana basketball reunion, bringing back a really great tradition that had kind of gone a little bit by the wayside, and they filled the dome at West Baden. Managers, players, and Bob was in rare form, and with razor sharp with memories, names, experiences, standing for pictures. I'm surprised that, of course, I mean, if Pose and everywhere else were still open here, there'd be a Bob Knight picture of somebody's grabbing him and standing up and taking a picture. I mean, any number of restaurants all through, the Chicken House down at Ireland, Indiana, has Bob Knight in it. It's just everywhere. And of course, when Smitty's was open on South Walnut Street, I mean, the back room was Bob Knight's. And thinking back and laughing in '84, I mean, Knight had from Dean Smith to whomever, to Red Auerbach, to on and on, being in there as part of the selection. And of course, Knight very quickly let it be known, I'm picking this team. You're here to ratify what I select. And everybody just kind of, and then he's like, now, and everybody said, yes, Coach, you're absolutely right. But their
persuasive,
their noontime day, they had a morning session in the field house, and it was set up as a lot of guys might still remember the old Bob Knight camp in what we now call Gladstein Fieldhouse. 10 basketball courts on a tartan floor.
Yeah.
And we would, they'd have the morning session, and Knight had his Bear Bryant tower right in the middle of the 10 courts.
Oh, wow.
So he'd just turn and lean and go around, and of course he had Henry Iba there, the great Olympic coach many times over, and the the Oklahoma State coach. I should say Oklahoma A&M to be more correct.
That's true, yeah.
And he had Pete Newell.
Yeah.
And then all these other people. And of course, C.M. Newton was there. At the time, he was the head coach at Kentucky.
Yep.
And so they would go to Smitty's for lunch in the back room. Here you are in a stainless steel greasy spoon on the south side of Bloomington, just below Grimes Lane and just above Bloomington High School South.
Yep.
Down in that area. And it had a back room in it, and I'd go in the side door and lead what is now, the College Basketball Hall of Fame into that room, and they'd sit down around this table of plywood and paper cloth across it, and then the stories would just fly.
Oh, wow.
And of course, then we had the 2 nights of basketball on Saturday and Sunday, 3 games each night, and Knight sat about where people are used to knowing that they've seen this, about where Don Fisher announces the games. Knight was up in that general area. So, of course, I was at the scores bench, and I would every so often, hey, Chuck! Hey, Chuck! And I'd turn around, and he kind of winked once, and he's like, introduce the coaching staff that I'm going to have with me in Los Angeles, and say the schools where they coach. So I introduced George Raveling from Iowa. I introduced Don Donaher from the University of Dayton.
Okay.
And I said, in making a repeat appearance here in the Assembly Hall, the head coach of the University of Kentucky, Mr. C.M. Newton. And the crowd booed.
Right.
And Knight stood up and clapped.
Which is exactly why he did it.
It was great. Just amazing, And that, those things don't necessarily happen like that anymore. I mean, just coming off a COVID year, Simon Scott Assembly Hall was a very, very different venue because there was nothing that the Indiana team could do on the court that would bring a response from a crowd. Or get the fans into it, because in the COVID year, everything was limited to the parents of the players only. And the NCAA rule, you get 4 tickets. So Indiana had 60 tickets. And then the opposing team had 60 tickets. 120 people in a 17,226 seat arena is just a little sparse.
Right.
And the teams would actually be their own cheerleaders. Defense, and they'd clap. Terrible rhythm. I mean, they were just, it was just one of those things. But we had a game, a scrimmage before the season started, just to kind of shake out the bugs and see what it was going to be like. With all the plexiglass around. I mean, our scores bench, we were encased in plexiglass.
I forgot about that.
And then I had to wear a mask. And so I'm sitting there announcing, and Archie Miller, our head coach, was leaning on the scorer's bench in front of me. And so I made some report about, now coming in for the white team, number, Rob Fennessy. And so Archie turns around and looks at me and he says, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "I guess you, coach." He kind of laughed, but
you still had to do your job.
Well, I had to get the bugs out too,
right,
and get used to it. When I did the 6 NCAA games then in March, where Texas Tech and Houston coming in, and Ohio U and LSU and 2 others. I mean, at Utah State. I mean, it was, we had about 600 people. That was what the Monroe County Health Organization allowed us to have in. And so I was still behind plexiglass, but I sat up in the radio announce position where Fish normally works. And so it was a pretty good seat. I mean, Don's got a nice seat.
He's got a nice spot.
He's got a nice seat.
He's got a good gig, too, doesn't he?
And I had a mask on. Now, I was glad I wasn't, Kevin, at the actual scorer's bench, because it was limited. You had the timer, you had the shot clock operator, you had the scoreboard, and you had the timeout coordinator, and then Dr. Pillar, the scorekeeper. Well, being down there, the plexi was all in place like we had it during the season. The masks were on. And then at the bench, you also had to wear the face shields.
Oh, no.
Which was nothing more than a foam rubber strip
glued to a piece
with a heavy rubber band, and then the plastic across the front. And I don't know how many times I counted Pillar. He kept a towel at the scorer's bench, and he'd take it off because he'd have to, like a windshield wiper, clean off the plastic so he could see, because it was so hot underneath all of that.
Yeah.
So those teams that came in for the tournament, did they understand they were someplace special, or did they just think it was another? They did.
Chris Beard
from Texas Tech
gave a historical review, because enough of the players knew of Coach Knight being at Texas Tech that Chris told lengthy stories about, let me tell you of the tradition you're walking into. And he would point up at the championship banners in the north end. He would point back to the 75 undefeated regular season banner that we have up. Right. And every other moment. And in the back hallway, they didn't use the Indiana locker room. And of course, we've done a lot of remodeling with Simon Scott over the years, and the last major was basically gutting the whole east side to make it into a locker room, a very large lounge that is now the Cody Zeller Victor Oladipo lounge, with a big pool table that has a ping pong cover, or it has two 98-inch TVs. And the idea is the players have a place to go and be there, or on a game night, the head coach has a place to meet the parents while the locker room is separate. Right. But the players can come through there and interact with them. Now that's in a non-COVID year. Let me stress that.
Yeah.
But we have all of that, and Chris knew enough about all of that, or he knew about the back hallway, and he's like, boys, if you ever want to see something, if we're here for an Indiana basketball game, that big screen, they have a show they put on, a 2-minute clip before the game, and it's this lady in a white janitor's outfit pushing a broom down the hall.
The greatest pregame
and
ever.
The place goes nuts.
Yeah.
They cheer and they shout, and of course it's the lovely Martha Webster with that moment. And he shared all of that. Now, don't ask me about Kelvin Sampson, because he was gracious. He spoke if he saw you, and if you made face contact. He didn't seek out anyone from Indiana.
Yeah.
But he, the entry that they had, he came in the side door of Cook Hall, the basketball building. And of course, Kelvin Sampson was the reason that building was built. So he deserves very much credit for what that represents. So he came in, he went down the stairs, he went across the hallway, where on his right-hand side, he looked into the two gymnasiums, the women's gym and then the men's gym. And then he was in the candy-striped hallway tunnel and walked into Assembly Hall. And like I say, I mean, some people, they did speak to him, and he was interviewed by maybe Zach Osterman or one of the Indianapolis Star writers during the tournament, because, I mean, he had a great Houston team.
Yeah, they were good.
And there's no denying the coach skills of Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah.
And so he was extremely gracious in talking about those 2 years and everything that it meant to him, and seeing how the building, yes, it's very nice. He acknowledged that, and I made eye contact with Karen, his wife. She was sitting just a few seats behind me, and we just kind of nodded at each other. She thinks she recognized me, and I definitely recognized her.
That's funny.
Which was a little different than the Watfords, because they all but came down and hugged me.
That's funny.
We have such great memories of when you introduced our son. Yeah. And I'm like, well, folks, there's a 6'9" forward that I'd die to have on our team right now. With Trayton, your son, your other son. Right. Well, it was a tough decision.
It would be hard to follow in Christian's footsteps.
I mean, he had a wonderful career. Yeah. I mean, it was a little bit of a rough first 2 years. Yeah. I mean, you don't come from Birmingham, Alabama, and be 8 hours removed from your parents and kind of have the rough start. But it all worked out.
And kudos for him for hanging in there.
Very much.
Because now it's easy to say, I don't like it, I'm going somewhere else.
Well, they do. I mean, the transfer portal, when you see how many 1,000 players were in it this year, it's a whole different game. And you've got to know how to work it. And of course, it's many sports. People tend to focus on basketball and football, but you think about how Tom Allen improved the lot of Indiana football this year by using the transfer portal with a Southern Cal running back, an Ole Miss defensive lineman who helped beat us in Tampa.
Yeah, right.
You had there's another lineman, and
from Michigan, is that right?
Yeah.
Did they get a DB too?
Yeah. I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted to look for. He knew how to approach them and how to sell them on Leo.
Yeah.
On love each other.
Well, the video of his players hugging him off the field is just, that sells it all right there.
Oh, sure.
No
question.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah. Was that Penn State when they were interviewing who What game was it?
Wisconsin.
It was Wisconsin.
And they
And
off
we
the field.
beat them at Camp Randall.
Yes.
Yes.
And, the players that came up behind him go
Yes.
to the locker room.
Oh, that was unbelievable.
Because Penn State was at home. That
First game. It was our start in October.
Yeah, when he reached over
Michael Penix with that. Well, it set the basis for the whole year. And so now let's see how it goes, because tomorrow, being Thursday the 5th, is the media day. And then first day on the field is Friday the 6th. And so it all starts, and we open our season in Iowa, at Iowa City on September 4th, and then come back with Idaho on the 11th in a night game at 7:30. And then the 18th, here we go with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
With the Bearcats coming in.
They're
Holy
a
cow.
top
They're
5 team or
the
top 10
real
team.
deal.
Yeah.
I mean, Luke the former coordinator at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So
Luke Fickell.
you know, I mean, he comes in, and then of course we get the real Ohio State on the 23rd of October.
We watched that game right here last year with that thing of door open, cooking out, and everything.
We had the doors open. We had the grills going.
Think what it was like on those last possessions when we're only 6 points down.
One play away.
Yeah. And then he threw the pick six and
then came back.
And then came back. If you take that pick six away, man, I mean, there's any number of things that are tough about. I mean, that would have been amazing. But at the end of the year, I mean, the Big Ten had to make some very hard decisions, and they kind of wavered on what had been the principles leading into the year over selection of a champion, or who would be going on to the postseason. Yeah.
And then when the bowl selections came out, I mean, hey, how do you take Iowa and put them in Orlando, and then Indiana, Tampa against Ole Miss?
Yeah.
Now wait a minute. Something's just not right there.
That doesn't seem right. I mean, it's like Kevin ran into Anthony Thompson a couple days ago. Yeah, and was talking to AT, and we said basically he should have won the Heisman Trophy, but he didn't go to a football school.
Yeah. So
he didn't win the Heisman. But you can't tell me that year he wasn't the best football player in America.
Oh, sure.
I mean,
I agree. We played Terre Haute North. Back then, you had to win your cluster game. My senior year, we beat them over there, and he was a junior. And I was joking with him. I hadn't seen him since then, but I knew who he was, of course.
He stepped on Kevin's face mask on the way
Right. No, I was an offensive lineman. Thank God. Nothing wasn't going to hit him. As a man, he was a man in high school.
Yeah, he was.
He came in our locker room after the game, and I joked with him. I said, "It's best you did that after the game when you walked in with no shirt on, because you scared us to death. Because that guy was
was cut. Well,
oh my,
still is.
Oh yeah, he shook my hand because I was talking to him, and I go, AT, you're still strong. You know that, and you're crushing my hand. He looks like he could play still to this day.
Very much.
Great, just very humble man, very kind, and it was just so nice to see him. I hadn't seen him forever. Your mom says she's ready for some football.
Yeah.
And thank you for the stars, Laura.
We have you ever seen so much excitement around IU football?
It's been a long, long time. I mean, it's Hep brought a lot when Terry came over from Miami. And it was a shame that he had the health issues that he did, but it's been a while. I mean, I can think back. You go back to when Anthony was playing. I mean, we had 2 years in 87 and 88 where we were sold out in Memorial Stadium. We had a game 1 year going up to Michigan State where the winner of the game was going to the Rose Bowl. Oh, wow. And we were very much in contention for that. But certainly a lot of people would probably go all the way back to in a sustained run of enthusiasm, they'd probably look at 67.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, we were what, 8-0? Yeah, we were 8-0 and had some unbelievably close games in there. What, Kentucky? Was it Kansas State, maybe. I can't remember the games there, but it was, John Eisenbarger, instead of punting, he'd run, or Jade Butcher would have a catch or something, or Harry Gonzo would scramble and make some play. And people forget a little bit about the Jim Snideckis and the Ken Kazmariks and the Nate Cunninghams and the Mike Deals and the people on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Because that was a great defensive team also. But we'd pull it out at the end. And of course, 8-0, we go to Minnesota and we lose. And we come back and the field house, the Gladstein field house, it was a dirt floor.
Mm-hmm.
It was full of people cheering. And then the Saturday after Thanksgiving was a game against some people from West Lafayette.
Yeah.
And came down to a three-way tie for the Big Ten title. Following that game, we won 19-14 over the Boilers. And Minnesota was up in there. And so it was a vote of the Big Ten ADs the next day. And obviously Indiana never having gone to the Rose Bowl, off we went.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was just unbelievable.
I think they're doing. Now I'm not a big believer. I haven't been a big believer. So I've poo-pooed them every year because every summer they say, "Oh, IU's going to be good at football this year," and I poo-pooed them and said, "Nah, you've been hearing that for 20 years." So last year, guy I work with, he said, "Hey, you want to bet on IU?" And I said, "They're terrible. They're no good." And he said, "I'll bet you lunch." So I think I picked them at 6-5 or 5-6, and they went 9-2. So
yeah.
Did he get you lunch yet?
I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
still hungry. Well, it's encouraging to see. I mean, the personality of the head coach has become a very real thing with Indiana athletic fans and people in general. Because when you look at his face, his faith, and how he lives, I mean, he's unbelievable. Somebody posted the schedule.
Yeah, Dennis.
Kentucky, Kansas.
I knew it was Kansas. I couldn't remember if it was Kansas or Kansas State.
That game at Wisconsin when they were running off the field, jumping on him and saying best coach in America. Yeah. I knew that's when I was like, man, these guys are this. He's got something rolling here,
Yeah.
And
well, you don't do that in Camp Randall Stadium.
No, and we haven't for what?
Oh, I mean,
40 years.
Oh, we've gotten blown out up there. I mean, we've won 3-0.
Yeah.
At that place, and then we had what we did last November with that victory. So.
And then you got
we're not going to sneak up on anybody this year.
That's the thing. The target's on their back now, and how they handle that is going to be determined.
And it starts early because Iowa, going to Iowa,
that's not easy.
Again, I mean that's a fine program with great tradition. Idaho, the Vandals they're not to be taken lightly, and then with Fickle with the Bearcats, and doggone, you go down to Bowling Green, Kentucky, against Western Kentucky, you better strap your helmet and be ready to play, because the Hilltoppers on their home turf are flat out good.
No easy games this year.
Then we have a bye. Let's see, where do we go? We have Michigan State on that first week. No, Michigan State's homecoming on October 16th. We have a bye week on the 9th. And of course, we have Ohio State on the 23rd. Then we play away a couple of games. And then we have Rutgers and Minnesota coming to Bloomington on the 13th and the 20th of November. So, I can't wait for the traffic jams in Martinsville. I'm sorry for the fall festival. We're gonna.
I'm on that board, so thanks. We're all right.
I tell you, Kevin. In our last normal year, if we can use that phrase, in 2019, we were right around 42,000, which is a true figure of tickets issued, but it maybe not is what was in the stadium.
Sure,
it can be a little less.
Sure,
but right now we're probably about 30% over that 42,000 sale. So I mean, I've got to think we're somewhere. I haven't seen the numbers, but we've got to be somewhere, 40, 45 to 47,000 seats sold, maybe somewhere in there. And of course, 2 teams from Ohio State, or the state of Ohio, sure doesn't hurt. So we'll see.
You said Chip said he gave you a tour of his Sibley Hall in 2014. One of my favorite experiences of all time is getting to shoot baskets in the court. Chuck is a state treasurer.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interrupt because I told Dean this earlier. When you think of when we growing up here, IU basketball, there was 3 individuals. And of course, Coach, Fish, and yourself. Because if you had to hear it on radio,
no, there's I'm not
but
in the league with those
you
two.
know what I mean.
You're kind.
To Fisher on the radio, he's and we'll give away secrets here. Is Pat Hughes, the Wayne Laravies of the world,
sure,
and just things like that. Fisher's right, and you said Hilliard Gates. High school basketball in Indiana with Chuck Morrow and Hilliard Gates was that back in the day.
Oh, and Tom Carnegie.
So, and then of course yourself, and then a coach. Just
been
amazing.
very fortunate. Now you think Fish. He's got me. I mean, I'm starting 45 years announcing, and I think he's 48 maybe, because he started my senior year, 72, 73.
Wow.
And we each have our stories to tell of how our careers almost ended. Don would tell you that in one of his early games that he spoke of the University of Indiana.
Oh, yes.
Now this might be the one I heard.
And
I think I heard this on Dockage.
And he was mortified when he was called on the carpet over that.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And he had that. And in my first year, we played Notre Dame in Bloomington, and that would have been Kelly Tripupka,
Yeah.
as I get my John Lloyd voice out from South Bend announcing. But we won in overtime, and Wayne Radford hit some very key free throws. And so, young announcer, first year,
excited.
I was replacing you were kind, Kevin, in including me with those 2 individuals, because I took the seat of a gentleman named Bert Laws. And Bert was a Washington, Indiana native who came out of college with no opportunity in the Depression for a teaching job. So he was an electrician by skill, and he became a university employee in our physical plant. And in 1936 was asked to be the announcer. And so he took over and announced 40 years, football and basketball, and then retired at the end of the 77 basketball year with Kent Benson graduating. So I took over the next year. And football, go through that, and basketball, we have the Notre Dame game. And I was getting excited, and I would talk about Radford scores, Wayne Radford. I say that only among the 3 or 4 of us sitting here on the east side of Martinsville. Because the next morning when I came into work, Bobby Donewald, assistant coach, is sitting there with then assistant athletic director Ralph Floyd, who served as 12 years as athletic director and was my mentor. I have the greatest love for Coach Floyd. And so I'm walking past, and Ralph steps out. Chuck, would you step into my office for a minute? Coach Donewald's here and wants to share something with you. I mean, Ralph was the consummate Southern gentleman, in having grown up in Washington, D.C. And so he had that Southern twang, and he probably had a cigar in his mouth. So I step in, and Bobby and Coach D, Chuck, shut the door, would you please?
Oh, wow.
Uh-oh.
And he's like, Chuck, we want to have a heart-to-heart with you right now, because Coach Knight asked me to come down and seek you out the minute you walked in the door. That if you ever pull that,
Stuff.
4-letter word, SH, again, you have announced your last basketball game for Indiana University. And I'm like, I can be coached, Coach. I mean, you can tell me what it is and how you want it presented, and I guarantee you I'll follow it to a T. Well, Chuck, Coach said last night when we were talking about your future that you were very intelligent, even if you were a journalist by degree.
He's got to get that jab in.
You guys
But-
stick you there.
But you can be trained, and you're smart enough that you'll listen, and we'll look forward to the next game as your re-audition to be Bert's successor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, got my attention.
Yeah.
Got my attention.
Message received.
I understood
Yeah.
that, plain and simple.
And-
Shelley says, if anyone's not seen the updated facilities inside Memorial Stadium, it is incredible. Second largest weight room in the country, 24 sports, one team.
Yeah, I mean that's the day job. I mean we've talked a lot about something I do for maybe 2 hours a night, if I'm lucky, 3 nights a week during the winter. But yeah, I'm a senior assistant athletic director, facilities, a role I've had since 1990, and so I guess I'm the manager of some wonderful facilities. Obviously, Simon Scott Assembly Hall, that for the changes we made in 2016, a new front door with the south lobby, the adjustments in the building, all brand new seats. Because, I mean, let's face it, 45-year-old seats are smelly and the springs are broken and
Yeah.
not
They're
very
li-
comfortable.
They're a little too narrow, too.
Well, yeah. Well, we didn't change the ironwork. That is one thing. But obviously, the huge change with Memorial Stadium
Yeah.
that some people used to say wasn't even a good high school stadium. And of course, they all point to Franklin Central or go up to Carmel or
yeah.
Noble Tucky or
Yeah.
any of those, Center Grove.
Yeah.
With what Kevin Moore has
Yeah.
there, or Eric Moore,
Eric Moore.
has there, and when Hep promoted the idea of the North End Zone, and so as it turned out, the day he passed away was the day we broke ground for the North End Zone,
Wow.
and then that was we moved in there 12 years ago in the North End Zone. And then we're getting ready for our 3rd year now in the South End Zone, which is the Tobias Nutrition Center, the athletic training area. Nothing was done necessarily, Dean, with the idea of an increased seating capacity. It was programming for the student athletes
Underneath.
So
Yeah.
as we closed it in and made the perfect oval with it, as Mrs. Kleinman would point out, I mean, she's been in the weight room.
Yep.
That, the things that turn the kids' heads are the weight rooms, to a degree, the academics opportunity with the counseling and everything. It's the locker rooms, it's the lounge, or you got pool table, you got ping pong, you've got Xbox. No, we've got Madden 2023 or whatever it is,
Whatever it is, yeah.
and
Whatever the kids are playing
and
now.
so they see that, and then the parents get excited because their son or daughter are, and particularly when you have the sincerity, and I mean this truly, the sincerity of any one of the 24 head coaches. They're not blowing smoke
Right.
when they talk about what your son or your daughter is going to have when he or she matriculate to this university, the State University of Indiana.
Yep.
It will be a degree that will serve them and serve them well. And we will, and of course, Fred Glass, our former athletic director, went to the extent with the Indiana plan where he said, you come to Indiana, if you're on scholarship, you will always have financial aid to finish this degree. If you go professional, if you transfer and leave, we will pay for your time to come back.
Really? That's pretty nice.
Now that says a lot
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Gives you a little safety net.
Sure, and so the guys, Cody Finn came back and finished from Charlotte,
Yep.
and of course, when they had the Friday night program of the Kelly School of Business, and Ida Jo, I can't remember her last name, she's the dean of the school. Talk about being a cheerleader. She's like, and Cody Zeller's here. He's going to be an NBA star, but he came back and got his degree.
Yeah.
How do you not love that?
Yeah, and the Kelly School of Business isn't.
That's no slouch.
Yeah, that's no slouch.
You start looking at the undergraduate and the graduate rankings. I mean, it's the real deal.
It's always in the top 10.
Easily.
Yeah,
very much.
So it's not like he was taking TV. He wasn't flunking TV.
No, not at all.
It's rare that all sports are given such equity,
Yeah,
equality, and then
Well, and that seems to be a very popular topic. I mean, we've been in the forefront of that, and of course, a lot of headlines coming out now with the
weight
report
bench.
from the attorneys reviewing the NCAA and March Madness.
Yep.
And of course, Indiana was right in the middle of that last year with our women's basketball when we went to San Antonio. As people will remember from last year, everything was in a bubble.
Yeah.
And so Indianapolis, there were 6 hotels downtown Indy, and of course, everything connected by those gerbil tubes and the runs. I mean, and they had their dining areas. Each team received a floor. Could you imagine being in the W?
JW.
Yeah, and you've got 32 floors and you've got 32 teams.
So we were trying to figure it out, how it was the logistics of it, and that's what we figured they do.
Yeah,
team.
Or you were at the Embassy Suites, or you were at the Hyatt. I mean, wherever you were. I mean, and you had private dining, and you could, if you wanted St. Elmo's brought in, if you wanted, I don't know if anybody went to Acapulco Joe's. That would have been a great trip up North Illinois. Had some great tacos.
But I don't know if there's a city in this country that could handle it the way Indianapolis.
Well, no, the men were really fortunate, but of course, then you have San Antonio that had the women,
right?
And Indiana was there, and we made the Elite Eight, and a wonderful run. But then you think back as you looked at ESPN and watched those games, and you were in high school, what looked like high school, and no disrespect, I mean, but small college gyms at Trinity or at UT San Antonio.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't playing in Mackey Arena. It wasn't playing in the venerable Hinkle Fieldhouse. It wasn't a remodeled, what are they now? Farmers Insurance Coliseum.
The Coliseum.
The Coliseum, which is a beautiful 9,000 seat building.
Yep.
And then, of course, Simon Scott and 2 courts in Lucas Oil and Banker's Life. I mean, you were in gyms where they didn't even change the floor markings. They had some discs up that said NCAA, but it was still truly the court of the school of ownership. But no, I mean, they weren't set for workout facilities. I mean, they had like the A, B, and C exhibition halls in the Indiana Convention Center with weight rooms that were to die for.
That
were equipment that the companies readily gave. And then you go down and you had maybe a stationary bike and some other equipment in San Antonio.
A dumbbell rack.
Terribly fell short. And after all of the notice by Tara Vanderveer.
Yeah, and Sabrina Ionescu.
Yeah, and people of that nature, and, talking of the inadequacies, and it needed to be addressed, and it's on the table now, and certainly some things will change. It will take time to probably get it to where, let's say, as an example, Dean, maybe the Final Four becomes 8 teams.
That's a good idea.
That you play away on campuses of participating schools, which the women do.
Yeah.
Or you play in pre-selected cities like the men do. And then maybe it's the Final Four comes together, or maybe it's the Elite Eight that comes together. But then that truly locks it in to a Lucas Oil or a Superdome, or maybe they do go back to San Antonio. But a lot of things have to improve because, San Antonio and the Riverwalk is great, but it doesn't have the hotel selection that Indianapolis does.
And the
walkability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
You know what I thought was interesting is IU has 24 varsity sports. 11 men and 13
women.
Yeah.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting. I was surprised by that when I saw that the women have more.
Yeah. Well, the two sports, you've got field hockey and water polo.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
That's what separates it. Of course, wrestling figures in there for the men. But the volleyball for the women, and a lot of Division I schools have men's volleyball.
Yeah.
Certainly, Ohio State's been great in that. Ball State in this state for men's volleyball, and Fort Wayne.
IUPUI Fort Wayne.
Yeah, IP Fort Wayne.
I didn't know that.
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
Well, one of Bob Knight's losses in recruiting was Loy Ball.
Okay.
Who was a great high school basketball player and played many games in the War Memorial Coliseum, but his dad, Loy Ball, was the head coach at IPFW.
Okay.
And so Loy stayed home and played and ended up being a Olympian, two times, maybe three times.
In volleyball?
In volleyball.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's interesting. You'd be surprised to hear that Coach Knight lost a recruiting battle to volleyball
in the state of Indiana.
In the state of Indiana, yeah,
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. One of the things I was going to ask you, what do you think? What do you think the future of Assembly Hall? Do you think it'll ever be replaced, torn down?
Well, it's quite a facility. It has its limits. I mean, it's hard to think this way, but it's been 50 years that building has been used for men's basketball, and almost that long for women's basketball.
Yeah.
Because when Tara played for Indiana basketball, it was in the early 70s when Coach come into the gym. Let's use this. You've got a great team. And of course, they made the AIAW Final Four in that period. And so, I mean, women have had just as much claim on that building as the men.
Yep.
But when you get behind the walls, and here's the old facility man talking.
Mm-hmm.
I know the warts. I know the air handlers that are shut off.
Okay.
That aren't, if I had them turned on, there'd be an awful lot of condensation, and people would take their morning shower a little bit early.
Yeah.
Or it is the original plumbing.
Oh wow.
I mean, 50 years with galvanized iron. That's it rusts.
Yeah.
And the pipe fills with debris.
Right.
And that was one of the issues that we fought a lot in the COVID year, because I'd get text or phone calls or emails the next day following a game about, "My God, the water was brown when I tried to drink out of that fountain outside section L." And I'm like, yeah, you probably did. Or if you flushed a toilet, you'd be surprised the coloring that was in there from the water. But you have to have circulation to clear the lines, because
So
it
if
all builds up.
Sits stagnant.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe the Cokes taste a little bad because we have the post mix, where it's the bag in the box.
Okay.
Now, of course, we didn't have it in the COVID year. We sold the 20-ounce contour bottles, which gave us a chance to add another $1.50 on top of the cost of the bottle.
Sure.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. But
Archie needed some. They needed some
yeah,
extra
well,
money.
we
for
all
Archie.
needed some money, But
Get Woody in here somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the type of things that happen. The wiring, the electrical. I mean, we have to be very careful. We just, pardon me, we this summer, going back to Christmas last year, we actually had 3 major power outages north of the Indiana Railroad in Bloomington.
Okay.
And with that, the last one was 9 days.
Oh wow.
So Assembly Hall had no lights. Memorial Stadium had no lights.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Cook Hall, Wilkinson, Gladstein Fieldhouse, the IU Tennis Center. Now, Memorial Stadium was kind of fragmented a little bit. The north end zone, where football is located with its offices and the athletic administration offices, is on a power feed that comes from Dunn Street. comes straight across.
Comes off a different
so
feed.
they had a different feed than the center campus feed. But every building north of the railroad, including the 3 large dormitory complexes, Foster, McNutt, and Briscoe, the new 800-bed center, that Walnut Grove Center that's being built in the parking lot behind McNutt, it had no electricity. Marching Hundred Hall on the corner of Woodlawn and 17th, or DeVault Center, the alumni building. Now, we had no power from the center university grid, but we did have full semi-generator trucks. But that limited the amount of lights we could turn on. In Assembly Hall, we all could work in our offices, but we couldn't turn the Musco lights on in the arena.
Sure.
And we couldn't turn the video board on over in the center hung.
It pulls too much
because
power.
it too much, and it would. We talk about a brownout, Dean. It would have been messy.
Some of those underground guys that run underground cable, man. I mean, you can't.
Well, it's the 207, 213 circuits that comes from. Yeah, I know. There's a transmission guy.
Yeah.
I have to ride back to Bloomington with and remember that now.
Yeah.
But when they pulled the 5-inch cable out of the conduit.
Oh wow.
I don't want to tell you how bad it really was.
It was. Yeah. Yeah.
We avoided some real difficulties.
See, and my thought is, let's say tomorrow they decided, okay, we're going to tear Assembly Hall down. We're going to build a brand new stadium. Well, that's going to cover probably 2 basketball seasons, wouldn't you say?
Oh, easily.
And so
easily, it would be interesting to see. Assembly Hall, when it was constructed in 1971, was the final part of a 4-building project: Memorial Stadium, the new field house, Assembly Hall, and what they call the Hyper Edition, and Royer Pool, which is in the center of campus.
Yeah.
We've been to the Hyper.
So the Hyper is where the field house used to be, is where the games used to be played.
The Garrett Field House, as it's now called, and where the games were played from 1927 through 1960, the end of the 60 regular season, before they moved out to the new field house,
which is Gladstone.
Now called Gladstone.
Yeah. Okay.
So with that, we 14.6 million doesn't sound like a whole lot, except do the multiplier to what it is 50 years later,
Right.
and you're probably looking at about 200 million without any financing.
Yeah. And where would you put it?
Well, that's the question. When Michael McNeely, for his 18 months as athletic director, he worked very closely with HOK architects, HOK sport and event architects out of Kansas City. And they now are called Populous. And they're a major. I mean, they're in the world of sport architecture, they're in the top 5. But you've also got the old Ellerby Beckett that now has been renamed. You've got Heery out of Atlanta. You've got a company in Houston that designed the Texas Stadium, the Texans Stadium. They designed Lucas Oil. They've done a couple of others. But they all have their signature buildings. And now, I mean, you start, when somebody started talking about the old Lucas Oil Stadium at 15 years of age.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute.
What are you talking about?
15 years old and you're calling it old?
Old. Yeah.
But I mean, there's all these amenities that go into it. I mean, you don't see any 70,000 seat Cleveland stadiums being built. You see 45,000 seat baseball stadiums with club seating, with suites. And they're all located in different areas. I mean, so many now, like down in back of home plate, or in back of the end zone, or if you go in US Bank Stadium for the Vikings, they have a major stadium club that's right in back of the Vikings bench, and the Vikings locker room is actually in back of that, and the team walks, they put up ropes, and then the team walks right through the fans out onto the field.
To get to the field.
and the purple craze and all that sort of stuff.
Well, didn't they do that at IMS? Before he sold it to Penske, didn't they send the suites out further in the corners? I thought they did.
Well, they've done a little bit of
everything up there.
I mean, the Holman George family did a
Yeah.
lot of. I mean, if you want to see suites,
Yes.
you go up there, or the new pagoda, and I mean,
That's-
all of that.
that
I mean,
thing's amazing.
it's palatial.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's all about how you divide up the seats and what you charge for it. If there's a seat tax, or if there's a premium fee, a contribution. I mean, all of us with colleges, we love to talk about contributions.
Sure.
But it all keeps the doors open,
Sure.
and it pays the bills.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil.
Well, it is. It really is.
Chip's on it tonight. He said, "Hope Chuck announced for the next 20 years."
20 years.
But has Chuck had a hand in training picking his eventual successor as an announcer?
Oh,
He's already got you going out though.
He does.
He's
20 years. Give me 20 years. I'll be 90 years old at that point. I'm not sure if any.
I was
Well,
gonna say,
no, I tell you, there's been a couple of NBA announcers, a longtime voice for
Sure.
Philadelphia, a longtime voice for the Celtics, and of course, who was that? Johnny, who did the Celtics radio?
Johnny
for,
Most.
Yeah, for all those years.
Yeah.
But if I'm blessed with 20 years, that means my sanity will still be with me. If people can put up with me announcing that long, more power to them.
That's a lot of sophomores.
That's a lot of sophomores. So it's at least 20 more groups of them.
Right.
We'll just wait and see how that all works out.
He must have old man bladder. He's had two. So yeah, that's one of the things like we always talk about is like it's iconic, but it's got a lot of bad seats.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when we were talking earlier about the 24,000 seats and not being able to sell the end seats and the hockey playing into it.
Yeah.
And what that meant then, Dean, was they had to build a balcony into it.
Yeah.
And in 1954, 55, when the building was designed by the Eggers partners, it was called Eggers and Higgins, and then the Eggers partners, they were the master architectural group for campus. They did several buildings. Now, they blew it when they designed Ballantine Hall. We should have known then that they made a mistake.
Yeah.
Because Ballantine Hall, the largest Bloomington campus academic classroom building, is Spartan and ugly. And it used to have, until they did a multi-million-dollar renovation the last 3 years, probably had the most window air conditioners of any building in the Western Hemisphere.
That's funny.
But they had to design a balcony, so they looked and they went to Raleigh, North Carolina, and the North Carolina State Fairground.
I've heard this.
And there was a livestock exposition building that had a almost like a scallop, and it had the high arches in the ends, and then cables held the roof up running between those arches. And so the design for what we now call Simon Scott Assembly Hall brought American Bridge Division out of U.S. Steel and Gary to Bloomington, where they built arches that started well into the limestone underneath Assembly Hall and went up and crossed, and then made the cupola, the hawk's beak as I call it,
Yeah.
at the top, and then crossed again twice in the north end. And then the spinning wheels went across. There's 56 cables that are anchored into the fascia of the east and west walls. And at the widest point, it's 330 feet across. So it's a football field and a little bit more of an end zone at the 10-second line.
Yeah.
But it ties in the middle to the bridge. So the roof, if you would have seen it as I did as a student in my freshman and sophomore years being built, there was the spinning wheel going across, spinning the cables that are about 3 inches in diameter. and then they laid planks in between that fit on the cables. And then there's an air vapor area and insulation, and then there's a plasticized roof with EPDM rubber that is the white. I mean, if you were flying over, or if you had a drone up, don't bring a drone down.
Yeah.
I don't need IU police out there with shotguns
going crazy,
shooting you down.
Mr. Crabb said we could do it.
Yeah, thanks. You know, but it's a white rubber roof. And so all of that 2.5 million pounds worth of roof is resting on those cables.
It's kind of suspended.
Yeah, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge. Or it's like the Verrazano Bridge, or the Mackinac Bridge connecting Lower Peninsula, Michigan with the UP. And so, you know, all of that comes into play. That was the type roof that we could be the widest apart in 1960 technology. And of course, since then, Buckminster Fuller helped design the geodesic domes, and then you got into the air-supported roofs of Syracuse and the Carrier Dome,
RCA Dome,
or the RCA Hoosier Dome,
Metrodome,
and the Metrodome. You know, in Minneapolis, things like that. And then they got into hard surface, like New Orleans. It was Mercedes, and I think now they've changed again. I can't remember who bought the rights for the next 20 years. Sodexo, maybe? Well, someone bought the rights, so it isn't Mercedes-Benz Dome anymore, Superdome. It's a new one. But, you know, you can be 70 and 80,000 people under one roof. But when we did Assembly Hall, it wasn't there. Well, that technology's there. I mean, somewhere in my files, and that'll be... I'll let Brad Cook from the University Archives take all of that. It'll be wheelbarrows and a small dump truck going out of the place. But you know, when Michael was AD, HOK gave us plans and said, "This is what we built for the University of Missouri in Columbia. It seats 18,000. We can build directly south of Assembly Hall and keep you in Assembly Hall for 2 years, and we'll build in what's called the blue parking lot."
I know where you're talking about.
Across from the IU DeVault Alumni Center.
Yeah.
And we'll build right there. Well, of course, the thing that kind of turned off some campus people, and you know, athletics, we're not the tail that wags the dog.
Yeah.
We're a part of something bigger than ourselves called Indiana University Bloomington. So we have to be very respectful of a Michael McRobbie and his leadership, and Tom Morrison, and a 9-member board of trustees about what they want. Well, this building that was, if you go up on the mezzanine floor of the Indiana Memorial Union, if you go in the hotel entry, on the mezzanine floor above the lobby is a scale model of the Bloomington campus.
Okay.
And when it was fabricated, they used the type building that Mizzou had and placed it directly south of Assembly Hall and showed that as a parking lot.
Okay.
Well, but try putting 100 to 130 foot tall building against Fee Lane and over by 17th Street, and think of the shadows that you create and the massive building that would be overlooking the street.
It just kind of plopped in there because the IU credit union's right there on that corner.
Well, credit union's a little bit west, but I mean, it all would have been impacted.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the beauties about the Bloomington campus is the Herman Wells philosophy of don't build on top of anything. The ecology and the environment to help people enjoy their time on campus, to sit, to contemplate, to look at the trees, to have the squirrels run past you.
Yeah.
In our case, in the north side, to have the groundhogs come out.
That's funny.
And run around.
Yeah.
Or or the roadway that goes up from Simon Scott Assembly Hall past Mellencamp up to Bart Kaufman Baseball. There's woods right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and what you have a lot of limestone that was quarried out to build Memorial Stadium.
I've always wondered if that's what that was from.
And so the stadium was built by now what's called Hunt Construction Company, once based in Indianapolis, still with a major office there, but now more out of Phoenix.
Okay.
Well, of course, then it was Huber, Hunt, and Nichols. And that was the first great stadium that Huber, Hunt, and Nichols built, was Memorial Stadium. And they did nothing more than they got a hold of the late Ralph Rogers, old Ralph, fifth grade education, and a multimillionaire with all of his construction and everything. Well, he bought these huge drill units that ultimately ended up being used, as a lot of people from here in Morgan County and Monroe County will remember, when they built the 4-lane 37. That's what cut the stone on the big hill when you cross county line and go into Bloomington.
Coming up,
Cut through it.
Yeah, see, so the big drills that Rogers had came from 1957 and 8 when they quarried stone to build the stadium.
To build
And
that.
so they took all that stone and just dumped up there. And in 63, they covered it over with dirt and created ultimately all the parking and everything else. But the stone's still there. We have a family of 5 foxes that live in those stones.
That's funny.
And when all of us used to go up to baseball in April and May at Kaufman, those of us that could get in, because, we're employees.
Yeah.
So we could get in, which was so unfortunate because Bart Kaufman had become a great gathering point in Bloomington on Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Sunday noon to see Indiana baseball. And of course, we'd put Kyle Schwarber through there, and Travis and Richardson,
Sam Travis,
and just on through, and
Josh Fagley,
and the pitchers that came through with that, the Foxes would do nothing more than lay out. We'd walk one side, we'd be in the street, and the Foxes would be sunbathing on the asphalt.
That's funny.
And they'd be looking at us like, "What are you doing walking up through our sunbathing area?
You're in my way."
Right.
Yeah, get out of my light."
Yeah. That's funny. What's Chris say?
Chris says, if IU football continues their success, any chance of further expanding seating at Memorial Stadium?
I don't think they can really.
Well, we have
some years of success, and I would think
we have the ability on the east side to the original plan of the stadium in '58 that was value engineered down was 2 equal sides of 109 rows. So we did build the 109 rows on the west side with the press box at the top. The east side was reduced to be 72 rows. So we very possibly, it depends on how we want to look at it, Chris, whether we would build a deck and have a cantilever deck over the top of sections 21 through 32. And of course, naturally, here's the money man, probably have some suites in between.
Yeah.
Or would we go to row 72, maybe do an overlap and put some suites and club seating there along the east rim? And then if you really want to thrill, do you want to put high seats above that? Okay, to give you a preface, Kevin, think about Beaver Stadium at Penn State and how high those end seats are. I mean, we're talking about something that has airplane red light markers at night
right.
because of a crosswind runway going into State College Airport.
Lucas Oil's high enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you get into.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could add, the stadium was planned to be 72,000 seats on 2 sides. So we could add another 12,000 on the east side. It just depends on what configuration.
How you would do it.
But it's got to take some and I mean, I've got to be honest, Dean. I mean, we're talking a little bit because we've been through the original master plan that built the 4 buildings that are the base of IU athletics. And then from Hep's time and then Rick Greenspan and Fred Glass, we developed another master plan. And that would be the north and south end zones.
Closing those ends.
That would be the south end of Assembly Hall. That would be the construction of Cook. It would be the construction of Wilkinson. It would be the Jerry Tardy Center, which is where bleachers used to be on the north side of Armstrong Stadium.
Okay.
It would be the foul course at Indiana University, the golf course.
I was going to ask you about that.
Those are the elements that were a part of it. And of course, it's now to the point it is true you can get a tee time at the foul course to play 18 holes, but it's an unbelievable spread. Steve Smyers was the landscape architect that did that. He was tied in with Fuzzy Zeller, and Fuzzy brought him to us. And I mean, it's a beautiful 18 holes that can play anywhere from 4,800 yards to 7,400 yards, I think it is, from about 8 different tees on every hole.
Yeah.
And of course, where we used to have whole acres of a green, not now.
They're tiny.
They're a lot smaller. And you want to talk about bunkers.
Deep.
Oh, and they're there.
Yeah.
And they surround. And they challenge. So we've had several Big Ten teams come through. We've had some time. I mean, obviously Fuzzy and Smyers have enough friends in the trade that they brought people through, and who knows? I mean, maybe we could be one of the developmental PGAs, or maybe an LPGA, or something along those lines. It'd be nice with Clint Wallman or Mike Mayer to bid on an NCAA regional, because now we truly have a challenging course that would be up to the standards for those players to be on.
And long enough.
And it's got to be long enough, because when we used to play, maybe 6,800 yards, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it was a lot tighter, and trees and everything. And, I remember we had the Big Ten men's championship one year, and the University of Illinois came over. And of course, Illinois has become a power in men's golf. I mean, they're flat out great.
Really?
And I looked at them and I'm like, hey, this guy's maybe 140 pounds. Okay, he's got a big bertha on his shoulder, and he hits the ball and it goes 400 yards. And I'm like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, how do you do that?
I can't do that.
See, I'm the other way around. I'm 400 pounds and I hit it 130 yards. See, I got the formula backwards.
But it's all about the strength, the timing, and the equipment that they have.
Yeah.
And they hit it. I mean, they really hit it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Their club speed. There's a guy that grew up here that's playing on the Symetra tour, and I've seen him swing, and his swing is just so compact and tight and fast. He's not that big. He's not bigger than anybody else, but it's just so fast, and he just creates so much club speed that the ball just goes.
Sure.
So
I'm terrible at golf. You know that.
That's all right.
So we'll see how we all keep going on that. I mean, the new foul course has been a huge hit. It really has. I mean, the first year we basically had sold out tee times the entire first year.
Really?
And we opened on June 15th of 20, right in the middle of the COVID.
Right in the middle of COVID.
And it was full from there.
Sam needs to do something on the...
Well, Chip Keller is saying, he raises a valid point of recognizing Sam Carmichael, who has been a great citizen of both of our communities. Mm-hmm. And Sam and Sue ran, obviously, the Martinsville course, but they also ran the IU course before it was renovated. And Sam was coach of both men and women. But to have something there on the foul course that honors his contribution to Indiana golf, and that is a very valid point that's well worth mentioning.
We've been working with Sam and Julie a little bit this summer, trying to get the word out that, hey, Martinsville course is still open.
Oh, sure.
You can still get to it, because
I remember some NDOT hearings, and Sam was pretty vocal.
Yes,
and understandably.
Understandably,
hey, you're
so.
Cutting off my livelihood.
Yeah,
and of course you all have driven that way. I haven't made an attempt to go east of the town square.
Oh, I go west. I go 67.
Yeah, I do too. But I mean, I know that much like we had happen in Monroe County, there are access roads being built that will allow you to move. It's just learning where, and because I guess, where is it, up about, you have what, there, the old Marathon station. Don't you have an interchange there? And
it's not an interchange; it's just an overpass.
Oh, but 144.
144 will have an exit ramp and interchange.
Or is it 44 that goes over to Franklin?
52 is going to be a combined. It's going to be
all together. And then you have to drive back down to get on.
Now those roads are in now. I do know that.
Yeah.
I went to Sam's and videotaped about 3 weeks ago. And actually shot different spots along the highway here in town. But the access road to Sam's is, there's a church, Prince of Peace church right there.
Yeah.
You're literally right off the highway, boom, straight down to Sam's. And it's in. The road's in. The course was packed and looked beautiful. So
that's good.
Good for him. And
absolutely.
Great
Well,
guy.
it's a phenomenal course. I mean, it's been a drawing card for this community for years. And I remember coming up once and speaking at the Elks Club. It might have been a Rotary or something, and Sam was there, and Sam introduced me, and he said, Chuck, right now this is the one place in Martinsville that we have where, if you do a day of golf, I have to bring them to the Elks to have banquets, or to have their cocktail party and then awards program, because it's the only large dining area that exists.
That we have, So with all the rain we've had this summer, the course is in beautiful shape. It's great.
Everybody's been blessed for that.
Yeah,
we all really have.
Yeah. So, well, Chuck, I really appreciate you coming in. It's been a blast talking to you.
Well, had a lot of fun today, Dean. No question. You and Kevin have been wonderful hosts, and enjoyed very much. I started as a journalist and coming out of IU in '73. So I've always been a bit of a storyteller. And as you've heard in our time we've spent together here this evening, I kind of digress sometimes and build on other points. But it prompts maybe some other memories and some things. And it's just fun to sit down like this and talk. And
reminisce.
There's a guy up in Lafayette, he's an attorney, and I don't hold that against him, but he used to have.
I was going to say Lafayette or the attorney.
Yeah, well, both. He used to do a radio show on WASK up there called Radio Free Indiana, which was just nothing but needling people of black and gold persuasion.
Nice.
Now, of course, before anybody says it, I know what the win streak is in basketball between that school and Indiana.
And we have
over
a delete
the last
button.
5 years. I know that.
Yeah.
I also know what the win streak is for Indiana over that school's women's basketball.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's still very good, too.
That's a good point.
And I have a great friendship with Sharon Versa.
Yeah.
Always will. And, of course, had the utmost respect for the young lady from here in Martinsville that was the starting guard for. And if I remember, she entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, Kiana's going to Virginia now.
Right.
So, yeah. You talked about Allie Patberg earlier. Allie's one of my favorite players, and I just love her.
She's just a neat young lady.
Just a great kid. And
yeah.
I want to emphasize from our standpoint that, and I'm a little older than Dean, what you gentlemen did down at Indiana University for this area and all of Central Indiana and a lot of places in the Midwest was just remarkable. And it's memories that we'll take with us forever. Not Coach Knight, Mr. Fisher, and yourself. And the way I look at it is, Fish on the radio and in the stadium, to hear your voice, it was that vibe that cannot be duplicated. And we joke about Pat Hughes because Cubs radio announcer, and we love him, and Wayne Larrabee growing up. but there's only a few certain people that can catch it, and you, sir, are one of them. And it was just
thank you.
phenomenal. And those are memories we will keep forever, and our love for IU basketball and
Well,
football.
now everybody has seen the white bearded man and kind of a little thin up on top. You know,
It happens.
Fred the barber in Bloomington, and still remember a few years ago, he's like, Crabb, what's the deal here? You keep trying to comb that down and over, and he just took and there went the front of my head.
It's gone.
It's all open now.
Right.
All open.
Does he charge you
getting there.
half price though?
No,
No.
no.
I'm getting
No,
there real
I
quick.
pay more, Dean, to have him run the trimmer over the
Right.
beard.
Delicately
Right.
trimmed.
I had a little billy goat here going. It actually got out to about a half inch long, and I had to cut it
Yeah,
yesterday.
I'm getting there. I know the irritating feelings.
Oh,
Yeah.
didn't like that.
That's funny. The two things. Okay, so this is going to be cheesy or whatever you want to say, but walking up the ramp, coming into Assembly Hall, walking it, that always gets me excited. You know
Sure.
what I mean? And then when you hear, "Ladies and gentlemen, your Indiana Hoosiers," yeah, I love that. And then of course,
Pretty good tag. You see, I stole that from Reb Porter
Really,
Hey.
because the Pacers played an exhibition game in Assembly Hall in '79, and I heard Reb, your Indiana Pacers, and I'm like, well, let's see how we can
use that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and so it just took off. And,
The voice is phenomenal.
well, yeah,
I want
I've,
some popcorn and I want to hear some balls.
well, I've gotten a few 6-packs out of that. It's been very nice. You want your voicemail address? Here, tell me the number. It'll only cost you. And
we didn't kill the show for this.
nice little things called Yingling or
Right.
or Gussie and Augie and all the people from
Right.
south side of St. Louis. God love them.
That's funny.
Well,
That's
anyhow, but that all is after the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Always, I'm not a Harry Carey person by any means. In that
Harry was
regard.
drunk by the fourth inning.
You'll be
easily.
You'll be announcing Mike Giommi for every
I could
person.
be.
Yeah.
I don't need that
Johnny starting
reputation.
again.
Yeah,
How's Giommi playing 3 spots?
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
So no, I really appreciate it because I mean, like I said, you didn't have to do this for us. You didn't have to come up here, and I really appreciated it. Helps give us some legitimacy, what we're doing. I mean, we've had a really good run. I mean, we've had, you talked about Eric Moore earlier from Center Grove. We had him. We've had Jerry Seasting. We've had Bud Wright. Bud Wright. Do you know who Bud Wright is?
Oh, I know because his son Kevin is a football coach
You're right.
for us.
Yeah. So Bud came in here. Bud came in here in a driving snowstorm. Drove all the way from
Sheridan?
From Sheridan in a
Oh, my
driving.
goodness.
Tell him why though.
But because he wanted to stop at Gray's and eat at Gray's.
The
It's-
chicken and the strawberry pie.
Right,
yeah.
There you go.
So
Smart man.
Right.
So Bob calls him. We're going to go on at like 7 that night, and Bob calls him at like 5:30 and says, "Hey, snowing or whatever." He said, "I'm already Gray's eating." He said, "I'm coming, man." So
He's
we
only
said,
15 minutes
yeah, it's
away.
only 15 minutes
Right.
away. So we're like, all right. So they drove all the way back home, and so Bob just renewed his vows about 3 weeks ago, and so Bud was there because Bob coached with him, and so Bud came up and talked to me, and we had laughs about him driving in the snowstorm. I said, "How was your trip down this time?" He said, "It was much easier, it wasn't
sure.
snowing." But and so he's the all-time winningest coach. Mike Gillen coaches at Mooresville.
Mm-hmm.
He's the 3rd all-time winningest coach. So we've had those on there. We had Eric Moore, who's won 1 million football games and a bunch
Of course, interesting story with him this morning in the Star and cancer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was out yet. I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah. So, that's unfortunate for him. Yeah.
For sure.
So, but yeah. So
Still remember him. Eric coaches both track and field and football, which means that his wide receivers, his D-backs, are all on the track and
Track
field
team.
He
team.
brought that up.
Either the relay team. I mean, because who was the ornery D-back they had that played for us? He was state champion in the 100 and the 200, and then he was just ornery as a snake as a defensive back, and he was a returner on punts.
I think,
he was there with Austin Mudd.
yeah.
Well, anyhow, but that was one of the years that Center Grove won the state high school track at Billy Hayes, and I can still remember Eric, big man that he is, carrying that 5-foot trophy in his arm, and like any klutz walking around the track, there is a definable rail that goes all the way around the first curve, the first lane. Guess who tripped? I mean, how many times is Eric Moore at a track and he trips over the railing inside the lane one, and he's got the trophy. And so I watched him all whatever it is, 6'4" of him fall and roll and keep that state of Indiana shaped trophy with the figurine on it intact.
From getting damaged.
Intact.
That's funny. He was the complete opposite. I had never met him until he came in studio, and he was a complete opposite. I thought he was going to be some Center Grove snoot with
no. He's the most personable individual.
He was so
when he
fun.
told us, I go down to Paragon and watch races every other weekend, and we're like, no, you'll fit in here with us.
See, Paragon, okay, now you gotta get me over there sometime for some pizza.
Yes.
Tomato pie?
I keep hearing about tomato pie.
Yes, it's really
Why
good.
don't we get him back in here one Saturday afternoon when he's not doing a game? We'll have some delivered. How about that?
Oh, they deliver to Martinsville,
we'll deliver
They'll
it.
deliver to us.
Well, we'll keep that in mind. That'd be a good party.
Yeah. So I hopefully, so I tried to get a parking pass for the IU Ohio State game. They're already sold out.
Yeah, I was going to say you're probably over at the Kelly School of Business or the Union number 1 or number 2 lot.
They said I could park here for $10
In Martinsville.
Yeah, in Martinsville for $10.
Ride the shuttle down.
Yeah, ride the shuttle down.
Right.
So
it's good to know that we have that situation happening, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Hopefully they'll get some traffic figured out here, and we'll go. You know what I mean? So
We're gonna put free parking signs out on the highway.
Yeah.
Just park here.
Yeah.
Take an Uber down or something.
Well, you have that, and of course, I look up the hill from where I am at the corner of 17th and Dunn, and they got a little late start on putting turn lanes in there and new curbs and drainage, and it's a little open. It looks like a lot of white rock right now.
Right.
Makes me nervous because, okay, folk, just keep in mind the calendar of August 4th. Now, this weekend, a lot of students will start matriculating back to Bloomington.
That's a good point.
Yep.
So I just want to bring to your attention, watch out for the U-Hauls and the Penske's and the trailers being pulled behind the SUVs. International students start. I mean, in Assembly Hall, we've been busy this year. The COVID vaccine center from Monroe County, from about April 1st until last week, was in Assembly Hall. So we had a goodly amount of traffic through all of that, and the first year experience and the residential programs, the halls of residence, and some of the other groups are using Assembly Hall and all of our parking lots for their check-in. So as students come down, the first period is August 7th through the 10th, and then they come in Monday, what would that be? August 14th. The 14th through the 18th is the next batch. And the 14th through the 18th will be the big
wave.
That'll be the monster.
Yeah. And don't take the back roads because it doesn't really save you any time because the roads are so narrow. No, I'm saying when they're trying to cut.
I get there in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Back when I go.
I'm saying trying to cut through town.
Oh, no, nothing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But it's all here again. I can't remember. Schools, have you started up this way yet?
A week from today.
Yeah, Mooresville started today, Martinsville next week.
Yeah, and then, of course, Monroe County schools began today.
Yeah.
And Richland Bean Blossom, I think, is the end of the week. They're in Ellettsville. So
yeah.
It'll be, it's all here upon us again. And
it's that time of year.
Football comes back tomorrow for us, and volleyball and field hockey this weekend, and men's soccer on Monday of next week. And I've got my fall all planned out with it, Kevin. Put me in, Coach. I'm ready to go.
I saw men's soccer today is ranked second in the nation, starting preseason poll.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so
we'll look forward to that. A lot of the talent returning, which is very exciting. Becerra coming back and the goalie returning. They're hungry. Yeah, boy, they are hungry.
They're angry,
and they are. And they still feel that there's something to prove, and there, you know, when you think of what 21 trips to the College Cup in a 45-year period, it's pretty amazing.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good run. Yeah.
Pretty good run.
Starts sounding like a Martinsville native, or was he Brooklyn? I can't remember where he was born and grew up.
Yeah.
He did those things in Westwood.
Centerton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did those
He had a
things
pretty good
up
run
there.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bad.
So not bad. Yeah. We talked off air. It's kind of interesting that, you know, Coach Wooden at UCLA, Steve Alford at UCLA. Steve lived here until he was in eighth grade. And then TJ Wolf is now coaching out there. So if you think about that, it's not 3 people from Indiana. It's 3 people from Martinsville have coached at UCLA, coached basketball at UCLA. It's crazy. So
yeah.
So well, it's we've been on 2.5 hours. It seems like we've been on 10 minutes. So it's been great fun, and I really appreciate you coming in. So
people's comments have been very kind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very, very
you're a
humbling.
legend around these parts, sir. I know you don't want to hear that. But
I'm just very fortunate. I'm a Hoosier native from Brazil, Indiana, that just kind of found my niche and did pretty well, made my parents very proud. And my father was a school teacher, elementary principal, and always talked about, son, why didn't you go into education? And then he would always catch himself and say, now, wait a minute, you are in education. You just aren't in the classroom every day.
right.
And he's right. So I've, you know, been able to have a lot of influence and contact with some really great kids, and now I watch their kids. And I guess I don't want to think about Kevin at 71 being the next birthday, but I can talk about generational Hoosiers coming back through.
When you were getting a journalism degree, did you ever think you'd grow up to know so much about electricity and heating and cooling and plumbing and electric?
But I could write a heck of an email and get some people stirred up with emotion and enthusiasm about this power doesn't work, fix it.
That's funny.
And, you know,
Or
I could get excited there.
badge is not working.
Well, or you know, take care of ROTC people.
There you go.
In, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to help them out. Give them a place for their German military badge.
There you go.
All the important features. Right.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for everyone watching. Thanks for everyone that gave stars tonight. Dan, I appreciate it. So it's been a great night, and go Hoosiers.
Thank you, guys. We'll see. We're going to end the show. Appreciate Mr. Crabb coming in. Dean, thank you so much. We will see you guys. I think I'm back on tomorrow night sometime. So love you guys. See you soon.